Hey, top of the morning to you. Michael here. Grandkids call me Roo. Thanks for being on. This is the first rollout in a live show, other than just an introduction video, to GoodNewsRoo. I've been doing this for a long time, since March of 2020, when the world locked down. Carol and I had been on a trip with Young Life, and we came home with several of these little gospel journals made by Crossway. The Gospels. We came in with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It was in a gift box. And I looked at them for a while and I went, well, gosh, it's not like I don't have Bibles in my possession. I have several here. So what am I going to do with these? I thought, and then at the same time, I just started painting online. I'd been painting a lot in my life, but really just thinking nobody's going anywhere. I'm just going to paint online. And so I started doing that. At the same time, I started thumbing through this Gospel of Matthew, and I got kind of excited about what if I were to use some of my watercolor skills and just draw a little sketch note of what was going on in Matthew. What would happen if I did that? And it started with this little drawing right here of this little blue person. See, that's this little person right there, and it's Mary standing in this light, and when the angel appears to her and says, Mary, don't be afraid, then turn the light down, then not so loud, and Mary, don't be afraid, because God did, you're highly favored. So highly favored has always been a line in my family that we say to each other, regardless of what's going on, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, rough, dramatic, traumatic, we just say we're still highly favored, because we really believe and honor God that way in our lives. And so it's just been a saying in our family, you are highly favored. So I drew this little person here, and well, I didn't really draw it. I just took a paintbrush. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a couple minutes. Just kind of went bloop, bloop, and it seemed like a pregnant Mary standing there. Wasn't pregnant at the time, but she was going to be, with this child who was God's son. And so that's how Matthew started. And then from then on, every day, I would come down to my dining room table, and I would grab a little can of paint, and I call it can because mine are in little cans. Like this one's in a little an Altoid box. That's my colors. These are professional watercolors, just in little half pans, sitting in a little box. I even have a little brass one. If you really want to get fancy, I even have this Bob Ross one here that's just there, see? Now, I have a big palette too that I use, but that's on my watercolor desk. It's in a cast iron skillet, and there it is. Okay, but most of the time I did this at my dining room table. I'd make a cup of tea, I'd set my Bible down, I'd grab my little Altoid box, open it up, I would grab a pen. In this case, it's a Pentel 05 Energel needle tip. And you go like, what? We'll have to rewind that to see what he said. It's in some of my introduction videos, you'll see. The reason I use this pen is because this pen bleeds a little bit when I touch it with some water or watercolor brush. So I like the concept of this pen. So I would do a little sketch. I just draw a little cornfield here, and I draw a little man out there. And by the way, I can always go back and change any of these that I want to, because they're still living, breathing documents, and they're mine. And so I drew a cornfield, and that had to do with the harvest. When it came to Matthew 5, which without me looking right now, I know is about being salt and light, what did I draw? I took my little pen, and I just drew one of the old-timey salt shakers. Remember those that sit on restaurant tables? Maybe you have one on your dining room table. NaCl is salt. If you're worth your salt, you're worth your salary, because salt comes from the root word salary. So lots of times Roman soldiers were paid in salary. So there are about 14,000 uses for salt, but this really just talks about three. Flavors, it heals, it preserves. So for me, when I see this picture, what do I remember? I remember salt. We are called to be salt and light. Okay, so what happened was I suddenly realized that my fast brain, my ADD, ADHD, fast brain's a great way to call it. Thank you, Dr. Jim Poole, basically said, when I see that, I remember Matthew 5 just like that. So during COVID, I just wanted to pour more truth into me. And so one day, just by accident, I started sketch noting the Gospels. I've been sketchnoting in church for a long time. I carry journals for that. And so all these little drawings remind me of the stories that I have read. And so that's kind of where this whole thing is going to go, that I call Good News Roo. It's not my news. It's the good news of the gospel. I just draw it, and I've got some folks who've been doing this with me for about a year, and they have kindly been working through the Gospel of John. And so I asked them, it was a private page, I asked them if we could go live and do this on YouTube. And for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to tell a story out of the first Gospel of John, and then I'm just going to draw a little picture. And I want you, if you have the Bible, to go with me. And so don't wait until next week to do the next one. Do as many as you want. We'll just catch up. In fact, these should not be my drawings. There's no grading here. This is not gallery work. This is work for you to remember John later. So here's what the Bible looks like without anything marked in it. It's here. It's called a scriptural journal. Maybe you've been looking at some of the videos. Maybe you don't have one yet. I'm just going to tell you, Amazon at about $5.99. It'll show up almost before your coffee's brewed. We have an Amazon warehouse deliveries near us. So if I order this at 10 o'clock at night, by 8 o'clock, my doorbell rings. I'm going like, really? All right. That's faster than I can drive out and get it. I didn't know you could DoorDash Bibles, but I guess you can. So here's what it looks like. It's made by Crossway, Crossway, and it's the ESV. That's the English Standard Version. If you don't like that version, it's still got great paper. Read it, and then keep some other Bibles around for you to look at. As a matter of fact, I do that. I keep this Bible here. It's what's called a Life Application Bible, and there's all statistics of just some things that I want to know when I enter into a book. There's also this Bible that I read kind of often, and there's the book of John is there. And then I use the Message sometimes by Eugene Peterson, and it's just in modern day language that I can sort of read it and go, wow, that's what he's saying in what I call the RSV, the Revised Southern Version. That's so like the Word was first, and the Word was present to God, and God present to the Word, and the Word was God in readiness for God from day one. And so you go like, what does that mean? Well, when you put them all together, I sort of then clear it up in my mind, and then I think that's probably what I'm going to draw today. That may be the whole piece. This book was written by John. John had a brother named James. James and John were the sons of Zebedee. And they were called the sons of thunder. I don't know if Zebedee was thunder or James and John were thunder, but just to kind of go around in your middle school, I'm thinking about me growing up in the South. If I went around Bluegrass Elementary and they go, that dude right there, he's a son of thunder. They go like, yeah, his dad's a fisherman, beekeeper, carpenter. I'm like, okay, that kind of fits. Well, it's real life for me. So I love the fact that they were the sons of thunder. He also saw this happen. Okay? He was with Jesus from the beginning. He was one of those disciples that Jesus chose, he and James. And so they were the raucous ones, and it's just a great story. If you haven't watched The Chosen, go watch some of that. It'll help you sketch some of this. Okay, so I'm not a trained theologian. I have not been to seminary. I've been involved in a lot of churches over the years, but this is my storytelling that brings these words to life to me. And then what I thought was, how can I remember them even better? The older I get, the worse I'm probably at memorization. But man, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So when I see a picture on one of these Bibles that I've done, I look at it and I go, great day. I remember exactly what that is. Just look at it. You know, I look at this here and I see him stepping out of the boat, and I see this basket of fish and bread right here. And I go, I know the story. This is where he fed the multitude near Tiberias on that hillside on the Sea of Galilee. Man, if you've never been to the Sea of Galilee, it's crazy. And Carol and I have been there 3 times, and we want to go back this year and maybe next year for sure with some friends and just study and sketch again. I was not sketching and drawing when I was there. I haven't been there since early 2000s, and I've only been doing this for the last 15 years or so, 12 years, just sketching and drawing and painting. So now you know my tools. You know how John started. There's some great key things in there. There's some people you'll have to keep track of. There's Mary. There's Mary Magdalene. There's Mary, the mother of Jesus. There's Mary and Martha. That's the first Mary. So you have to untangle those Marys sometimes. Places that this took place was in the Judean area, in Galilee, in Bethany, in Jerusalem. Jesus walked all these places. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to just tell you a little story, and then we're going to talk about what I would draw if I were doing this. So I'm opening it up, and I look at the preface. I read it. The words of the Bible are the very words of God, our Creator, speaking to us. You either believe it or you don't. I do. I believe that all this storytelling was handed down. I believe that every jot and tittle that's supposed to be in there is in there. I believe in the canonization process of how it was put together. It's just things that I believe. And by the way, it's the best congruent story I've ever seen that talks about the history of the world and the history of God. And so I believe it. And I believe it's for the edification of man. I believe that you probably can't change the world by yourself, but I think you can change the world around you by understanding this word. And I know that John said that I'm writing this, and he wrote this in about, some say 90 or to 95, somewhere in there AD. He wrote this when he was an older man after he had witnessed it all. In fact, there's a thing in 1 John that he says, we were with him, we saw him, we touched him, and now we're telling you. And so here he is writing these stories. And his gospel is different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It really is. It's him telling the story that God was really who he says he was. Who is Jesus? He's the Son of God. Who is Jesus? He's the Son of God. What do we just celebrate? Easter. What? God's Son who came for the sin of man. Okay, so that's how this sort of comes together. All right. Here we go. Here's the first one. Blank page. By the way, this is thin paper. A few notes as we start again this morning. This is thin paper. If you put too much water on this, it's going to buckle up. As a matter of fact, this book will get a little thicker as you paint it because the page is going to swell a little bit. What I do sometimes is I'll keep, especially when I started, I don't now, I just do it because it's for me. This is not for me to hang in a gallery once again. It's not for me to share with people unless you just want to say, hey, what did you draw? And by the way, this community that you're building right now online is a real community. But it's not as close-knit as someone next door. If you see a name or some names pop up or comments pop up, if you see some names pop up and those names are there and you know that person and you live near that person, connect every now and then and talk about this is going on. I believe real community works. I believe that's why we do need to get together. But I will just tell you that Roo's Crew and Roo Doodles on line painting and GoodNewsRoo has been a community of people who are supporting each other from as far away as other countries, and it's really been fun and encouraging. I use a small piece of paper like this. This is a simple drawing pad. There's a lot of introduction this morning, but we're going to get to a painting. But I want you to know all of this so that you'll sort of be ready to go. Remember, small box of paints. Could I use my children's Crayola little flat pans? You can use anything you want. If you have watercolor pencils, if you just want it in black and white, use pen and ink. I do a lot of these in pen and ink. I love the shadowing of that. You can do it in charcoal. Crayon's a little tough for me because you can't do detail with a crayon. Okay, but I keep these little drawing pads around. I like to give these away to people. This page is kind of close to this one, maybe a little thicker, but it's a smooth surface and it lets me adjust or try something if I want to try it. What I use for a brush, most of the time I use what's called a aqua brush. Here's one well, what did I do with them? I only had 5 of them filled up this morning. And did I leave them downstairs on my table? I may have. All right. I filled them all up and left them, it looks like. So let's just put some water in this one right here. We can do that real quickly. But all right. So this is called an aqua brush, and it's made by Pentel. Here's what it looks like. Pentel. You can get this at a big box store. You can order from art stores. You get it from a Hobby Lobby, a Michael's, Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. It has a nylon brush here. It holds water. You tip it over, you squeeze it a little bit, and a little drop of water runs out through the end, boop, and drips in my hand. You didn't see it, but I did, okay? And then that's enough for me to paint with. But I also keep some other watercolor brushes around. You don't have to buy sable brushes. I'm not complaining about them. They're great brushes, and I have a couple. My point is nylon, a good round nylon brush will work. And if you're writing down notes and you want to know, for those of you who watercolor with me, you've heard me say this 100 times or more. This is a 4 and a 6. These are American Journey brushes, and they're made by Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. They have a long lifespan, and they keep their shape really well. They spring back. You'll want a little bit of detail. So I'll show up at my desk or my kitchen table with a cup of tea. Sometimes I will put a tea bag in a cup, and I'll just pour in about an ounce of water. And I'll just let it steep at the same time that my other tea is steeping. And I'll paint out of that tea water because it has this brown, which is a golden, rich, raw umber looking brown light that reminds me of Israel. The stones are that color, the dirt's that color, your feet are that color when you walk around there. Excuse me. So all of that I paint with. So let's get started, and you'll see the tools. The point is, you don't have to have my tools. You start with what you have. If you want better tools, you can certainly email me at roodoodles@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to respond to you. Here's the way I do this. Turning to page. If you don't have this book yet, don't worry. Start next week. Start now just making a little drawing. We're going to start. I don't even think this page is numbered. So it's probably going to be 6, 7, and 8. So did this just stop at 5? Okay, it starts with page 8. Isn't that weird? All right, here we go. So it says the Gospel according to John. And here it is, and here's the blank page. Now, the reason you want to paint lightly is because on the other page, you've got the rest of this story. So I'm going to pick up another paragraph or two, and I'm going to paint something different on this page, probably tomorrow morning. I did this for a year every morning at my breakfast table. It was life-changing for me. I'm up to 2 Thessalonians, so I went back and put the Gospels in a box, and I bought the entire rest of the New Testament. And so I did. And Romans, I painted Paul so many times, I got better at painting people. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to start the story, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to show you a couple ideas on painting for this morning. This is a kind of a pseudo intro. Welcome to GoodNewsRoo. And if you want to tell your friends about this, if you want to get some folks involved from your church, from your Bible study, from your neighbors, here it is. These are going on YouTube where you're watching it now, and it's going to stay there, Lord willing, until YouTube gives it up. Here it is. The Gospel according to John. The Word became flesh. What? The Word became flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. You read that all the way up through verse 5, and you go, whoa, that may be the whole picture for me right there. I know I'm going to do something with light. That's just how my brain fires. And I want to remember that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And there was a man sent from God. So God also sends another man. His name was John. He came as a witness. Now, this is not the John writing the book. This is another John. This is that prophet John that we're going to find later on, who comes out of the bushes, out of the woods, out of the mountains of East Tennessee. See, I'm a storyteller. And he's got on buckskin. No, he's got on locust cloth and a camel hair vest, and he's eating locust berries or locust He's eating wild locusts. Could it have been the locust from the locust tree? Maybe. Could it have been locusts? Yeah, like grasshoppers. He's eating honey and locusts and dates, and he's coming out of there, and he's going, whoa, there's one coming who is greater than me. And I came to tell you about the one that's coming because he came before me. And they're going like, whoa, you got this confused. It's a great story if you read the whole thing. So what I want you to do each morning when you sit down with your cup of tea and your book of John is just to read it. And then maybe you want to read it in another version. Maybe you want to do a little background study. You can do this in 25 minutes. There was a man sent from God, and his name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. They all might believe in him and through him. He was not the light, John wasn't, but he came to bear witness to the light. You see, what you do is that you're not the light, you're just to shine and reflect the light. The true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. Wow, that's not different than today. God made the world we live in. We're kind of afraid we're going to tear it up sometimes. I think we need to treat it well, and I think we need to treat our resources well. But I think God's in charge of making the world. He started it. He'll stop it. And so I really believe things like that. And I'll say things like that, and they're not to start theological arguments. They're just how I see this story. God made everything that was made. He made all that too. He made the made. He came into his own, and the people did not receive him. He showed up, and they went, no, you're just a guy that's down the road. You were Joseph's son. Remember, Matthew has a story about that. But all who did receive him and who believed in him and his name, he gave them a right. He gave them a right to be children of God. This is where religion falls away. Hear me here. This is where religion and rules and regulations fall away. And this is where a personal relationship with the God of the universe takes place. Wait a minute. Those who believe him and follow him and accept who he is, he gives them a right to say, you're my son, you're my daughter, you're in my family. There's nowhere that says you have to do these 10 things, these 5 things, this, that. You have to do it this way. You have to line up here. You have to show up here. You have to pray to this person or that person. None of that. It just says, believe who he is and say, I want that in me. I got it. And he says, you got it. To all who did receive him, boop, it's a heart thing. It's not religiosity. It's relationship. He gave them the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, or the will of man, but they were born of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that's where we'll kind of stop today. The Word became flesh. Eugene Peterson says in John 1, you got to love this, right? You got to love this. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. God says, I'm coming. I'm sending my son because the only way that man will get out of the predicament that the world has been in forever, since the dawn of time, since before the flood, the Garden of Eden, when the sin caused man to, when Adam and Eve sinned and caused the whole universe to fail. That's not what God had planned, but he had a plan. He gives us that choice. Choose life or choose death. And so he said, I'm sending my son. So here he shows up. His son comes in. And then we have John telling the story. He's going back and he's now telling the church of Jerusalem and all the people that he's writing to and us these thousands of years later. This is what it's about. God in the beginning was the Word, the Logos, the Word. God is the Word. So when you read these words, you're reading who God is. All right. So then what would I paint here as I finish this up this morning? And you get to work on this and think about it. Here's what I would do. I would think it's got to be light. And it's got to be a figure coming out. And I've done this once before, but so I'm a head start on you. I don't want you to necessarily paint what I paint. I want you to paint what makes your heart and mind connect to this story and say, was it in the beginning? Was it him coming to here? Was it light? Was it life? Was it all those? How do I do that? For me, it's just, I'm just going to grab my pen. And before I do this, I'm going to take 1 minute and I'm going to just show you how I do quick little people. Okay, you ready for this? Here's a little notebook right here, just a little flower page. I've got a couple ways that I can do little people. Little people. All right, here we go. I'm going to take a pretty good sized brush, a number 6, and I'm just going to do I'll do a blue person, so he'll pop up a little bit here. Here's a blue person right here. Not blue as in sad, but just blue. Okay, I'm just getting a little bit of here, right here. I'm getting a little wet brush, and I'm just putting it in my blue ink, or blue paint right there. And then I'm just going to touch this down like this, boom. There's the head. See it? There's the head. See that? That's the head. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to lay it down bold and I'm going to drag it down just like this very gently. Just come down like this. And then I'm just going to do a little shadow. I just painted this person. You're going, wait a minute. Whoa. Those of you who haven't done this yet, we call those people who paint with me on Roo Doodles Live, these are called carrot people. And some say Bob Burridge came up with it. I met Bob last week and he's going like, yeah, man, I painted a million of those people. But there's other people before me that painted them. And so if I just do a round dot and then I go down like this, and then I've got like this, I got these two people talking to one another. You're going like, wait, did he just do that? I'm going to do one more without even I'm going to do a small child here, just a little dot. And then just come in here and come down here. Boop. There's a little kid right there. Okay. And you're going, wait a minute. Look, that's all I need for my journal. I need a sketch note that reminds me there's some people here. Okay. And so there's these little people. You just sort of press the brush a little bit more as you do this. I'm going to make the head, and then I'm going to flatten the brush out a little bit like this and just drag it back in. Okay. There's a person who has some pretty broad shoulders. And I can put a little, and so there we go. All right, so there's a little family of people. Now, sometimes I just need a little person doing something else like this, and I'll take a person and I'll draw their head. The things that you want to learn to draw when you do this, make sure you can draw a circle, make sure you can draw a square, make sure you can draw a triangle, make sure you can draw one of these. A little bit of a, not a full triangle, but a cone, and then a rectangle, and then a dot, and then a line, and you've got all this. Look at this. This is a little bit of a round cone just coming down like that. And then here's that cone that I drew right there. It is right there. And then take this cone on down. Maybe this person's going to be just looking like this. Maybe this person, oh, look what I just did. I just drew a little person walking right there, just with all these shapes that I just had here. People say, I can't draw a stick figure. Well, if you did draw a stick figure, it's going to look like this. So for your journal, which one is more attractive? All right, so let's do it one more time. Look at this. I'll just take this. I'll draw a little bit of a head. I'm going to do the shoulders coming down like this. There's an elbow coming out. And I'm drawing these biblical characters. And so because they were in biblical times, maybe this person has a beard. Look at this. I just did this person with a beard, okay? And he's walking forward. And there's the foot going this way and this way. And then so I've just done. Now, I'm going to take that little drawing right there. And I'm going to have that person coming out of the light. Wow, you got an art lesson and you got a Bible lesson. What more could you ask for? Okay, so I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to take that same little head. Now, I'm not even with a pencil. I'm just going to do it with a pen. What if I mess it up? So what? It's my book, okay? Then I'm going to take this down like this, draw this person here. This foot stepping forward, or maybe this arm is swinging around this way, and this arm is coming out like that a little bit. I'm going to put some facial features on here. So I have this person. Maybe this person's been on a journey. He's got a little bit of a bag around his shoulder. There he is right there. Take some cross hatching like this. Just shade it in a little bit. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a little bit of what I might call a Bethlehem star, just with a little bit of this right here. And then bring down some light rays like this, just still using my pen. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab my brush and clean my brush out. And I'm going to just go in here and I'm going to grab some yellow, some bright yellow. In this case, I'm grabbing what I call gamboge out of my little pad. Can you see me grabbing it right there? There it is right there. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to come in down and I'm going to start just making some light coming out of here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and in Him was life, and the light of all men. He's coming in light. So now I'm softening this up and I'm bringing it down and I'm just letting it wash over this person. And look what's happening. It's blazing around here and I've got this star coming in, but I want to create this coming out of the heavens. So I'm going to come in here with some blues and I'm just going to roll some blues in here just like this. These paintings for me, when I started this, weren't supposed to win any contest. Once again, I'm going to say this out loud. They aren't supposed to be hung in any galleries. They are for you to go back and review. Maybe they're for you to share with your children. Maybe they're for you to share with your kids and your grandkids. Maybe they're for you to share with your small groups where you guys talk about it and go, oh my gosh, look at this. It's probably the worst thing I ever painted, but man, does it get the point across. And so I'm coming back in. And by the way, let's say that I wanted a little more pen up here. I can take this Pentel pen and I can bring it in. I can draw some bursts coming down out of here like this. And so I suddenly have this. Now this person is a little plain, so I'm going to go get a little bit of maybe just a touch. By the way, this water pen works really well for that. This is that little Pentel. Just going to squeeze it a little bit. I'm going to get some brown on it. There's a little touch of brown right here. And I'm just going to put a little bit of a brown, because, well, it's a brown robe. And then maybe this is a little touch of some hair coming down, and then just a little bit of shadow coming out. Use my finger across in here just like this. Maybe pull some of this yellow with my finger and put it right in there. Did you see a grown man paint with his finger? I love that. Okay. And then we'll cast some shadow back here. And maybe this comes in, and maybe there's just a little more brightness to this right here. And I suddenly have this little picture of this person. And I'm just writing, the light has come. Boom. I'm done. There's chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning, with God, all things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and that life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, moved into the neighborhood. Wow. When He moves from the neighborhood into you receiving Him in your heart, then your whole pictures start to change. GoodNewsRoo. Hey, thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to stop, and in fact, in 5 minutes from now, I'm actually going to go live on a Patreon class, and we're going to teach regular art. But get yourself a little pad. If you want to buy these, Amazon is $2.35. Cheap Joe's is $2.59. Blick is $2.49, I think, but depends on how far they have to be shipped. These are little, but use a thin piece of paper to practice with that reminds you of this book. Be careful with your water. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You're going to make them. By the way, when this dries, I can come back in and put some more in here. Watercolor pencils would work great in this. So what that there's a little darkness running out into here? He's overcoming that, okay? And I'm not trying to paint the whole page. I'm not trying to frame it. I'm just trying to let it be. When I open this, I go, boom, I know what this is about. That is farther than I'd ever gone in Scripture in my life. I could read this and go, yeah, I think it said something about light and made. Now I look at it and I go, He's come to be the light of the world. And darkness has never put it out. There's my thought for today. Hey, blessings to you all. And it's YouTube. Thank you for joining that. And GoodNewsRoo. Not my good news, His good news. Blessings to you all. And I'll see you next Tuesday right here. If you don't have this, you want to email me, you can get the email through my website at roodoodles.com. The Gospel according to John, made by Crossway, and that's the Bible. If you want to do tomorrow, turn the page and do tomorrow. If you want to do it right now, if you use too much water, it's going to leave it a little crinkled. Don't worry about it. It's going to be a fatter little book when you're done. Blessings to you all. Love it much. See you next time. I am gone. Shoo.